Hello and welcome to another episode of Think About It with Osita Ifezwe. Today I have a very interesting guest. We were fortunate to meet at a conference some 3 weeks ago, and he had very interesting perspectives that I think that the guests or the Think About It with Osita Ifezwe podcast should hear. Derk-Jan de Grood, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I like it.
Nice, nice. I was having a lot of interesting conversations with you
Yeah, I
during
think we had
the
some good fun
conference.
during
It
the
was really
conference
nice.
and in the fringes of the conference during dinners as well.
Yes, it
Yeah.
was really nice. And tell me, you call yourself an inspirator,
What do I call my inspirator?
inspirator, or
Yeah.
what did I? Okay, so
So an inspirator is basically a professional, senior professional that just does not only know things but also can get people inspired, so that they jump out the room afterwards and say, "Oh yeah, hell, let's do this." And,
so
and we write it with the double N. So it's
it
like,
was okay. That's why I confused inspirator.
yeah, but that's
Yeah.
because I work for Inspire, which is
Okay.
a company that aims to inspire and innovate, hence the double N. So we
Okay.
have some kind of strange thing that everything within we want to write with a double N. So that's why
Ah, nice.
inspirator.
Oh,
It's more a joke than, well, for me, it's more a joke. Don't tell my
okay.
boss. Don't tell my boss. He's very serious.
Okay, I wouldn't. That's nice. So
Yeah.
tell me, your experience as an inspirator, what do you do?
What I do.
Yes.
Well, for one thing, I'm just a consultant. So I just hire myself away to different companies, mostly when they are struggling with agile problems. That's why we met at the Agile conference, right?
Yeah.
Uh, or when they want to improve their flow or they want to increase their value output, so delivery. So that's the main game. And in the time that I have left over that, I try to help other companies or give trainings or write books or visit conferences and talk on conferences, etc., etc. So it's all about the inspiration and sharing that with the world, I think. But you cannot do that without having your feet in the solid clay, right? And just doing the job. So on one hand, I'm doing the job just to get the story right, and on the other hand, when I get the story, I want to do the job to see if the story is actually right. And that's the game I
Oh,
play.
beautiful. Beautiful. What would you say are your key takeaways from that conference, Can Agile? Because it's a conference that
Yeah,
kind of was targeted towards product managers, agile managers, and basically
a
agile.
key takeaway. Yeah, I'm not really sure if I can summarize it in one sentence. Uh, but I thought it was an interesting conference, especially the first day. I liked the first day better than the second day, because the first day was really good with the opening keynote and the closing keynote. And I think it had a nice tension arch from the one to the other one. And I think that's the best for conference.
Yeah.
So to a conference, I always say a conference is successful if I have four goals reached. I want to make new friends. Hi, Asita. I met you. I want to meet some old friends. I want to learn something. So when I present or something, then I learn people and I teach people, and I want to learn myself as well, right? So they were all there, and if I really zoom out on the conference, it's not about the individual talks, right? It's about a mixture. Just like, I'm not sure. Do you ever go to the opera or have ever been to the opera? Really?
Yeah, not yet.
No. But the good thing is like you're immersed in the music, and at the end, when you're laying in your bed, you hear all the melodies in your head. Not the single melodies, but the whole mashup of it.
Yeah.
And that's some kind of sphere that you get some impression. And the same thing is you have the individual talks, but if you mesh it up and you look at it from a distance, well, the main thing I was struggling with, I think, was that most of the talks were not aimed at us, at the people that were there. So a lot of talks were much more, I think, aimed towards the manager, the leaders in the organizations that were
Yeah.
not really there.
Mm.
And I had a little discussion with the organization and said, yeah, but we're the bringers of change, right? So if we all there and we learn it, we can go home and tell those stories again, tell those stories, Osita, uh, to our leaderships teams, and then they'll learn.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and
Mm.
and yes, on one hand that's true, On the other hand, I wish those leaders were there so they could hear it firsthand. And secondly, we're already bringing a lot of change as agile coaches, kind of thing. So maybe we're not the best one to tell that
Mm, mm.
because we're
I think I
already
found,
our story might get lost in all the other change that we try to do as well. So that's why
mm,
one thing is like, why don't we have these conferences where leadership shows up? But probably this leadership won't show up, and that's the problem in the first place. So if you ask me
yeah.
about the conference, that's the high level thing.
Mm. So did you see that there was a blend was more for high level managers than the everyday team members who would get the
Yeah,
job
yeah, I think
done? Okay.
so. Some,
Yeah,
not
okay.
all,
Because
but some.
I would say one key takeaway from me is status quo is a killer of innovation.
Oh yeah, sure thing. But who I know, you know, most people, senior agile coaches kind of thing know. But does leadership understand that? And how does leadership in organizations, so organizations, not just leadership, of course, how do they make time uh, to actually have time for those things, right? Because a lot of leadership say, I don't have time. That's probably why they're not at the conference in the first place, because they're busy doing important stuff. But this is the important stuff, but they're not aware of that. So maybe you, as
Yeah.
a Sita, a storyteller, can change the world because we need to tell a story that say, oh, but looking from that angle, yeah, maybe I should have some time for this, for innovation. Maybe I should sit down. And I think that was well put by Linda, right? Because Linda Lucas, she was telling a lot of things about playing around with kids that she was doing and she made a playground, an actual
Mhm.
playground. Actually, I went there afterwards.
Okay.
That was very funny to see. And I think Tricia Broderick in the end keynote also said something like that, like managers should play more and innovate more and experiment more.
Mm,
And I think that was the attention arc I was telling about. Like we started with an opening keynote about childish, how we maybe can spark the message in a better way to children or even grown-ups that could play more. And in the
mm,
end keynote, had some link there, and I thought, yeah, that's it. We should get people to innovate more rather than run, run, run.
mm.
And I think that's one of the key problems we have, that a lot of organizations are overwhelmed by all the things that they need to do, managers as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where's the time to play?
Yeah. I like the fact that you connected the storytelling angle to it. That
Yeah,
actually that is what might help a bit of the emotional side come out.
yeah,
Uh, yes, and you're very correct in terms of the focus a lot on in organizations is that okay, hey, be very serious with task assigned and kind of changing things, even though we know that doing that would lead to a new knowledge or
yeah,
grow innovation. Yet, because of disrupting things, it's a bit like frowned against by this leadership position or leadership people in leadership.
yeah,
But this is where we kind of then bring the storytelling angle into it. Okay, how do we then connect to the emotions of these ones? And I like that you brought out the example of Linda,
yeah.
who was discussing quite a lot about playing. And I think someone else in the conference was also talking a bit about playing. I don't remember the part of the
I
talk,
think that was Tricia Broderick was a lot of the talk.
Trisha, yes,
Yeah,
the other keynote. Trisha was kind of also, and I like the part where she actually demonstrated resilience by actually doing that on the
and the
spot.
kind of thing. Yeah, yeah, right, right.
And
Yeah,
that's being very, very playful at the same time, passing a message that could connect. And I'm sure everyone that was at that conference would remember definitely that part.
yeah. I won't recognize her if she's walking on her feet. Possibly know. Like,
Yeah.
who's that? Oh, wait, it's because for people that might be not at con, she was practicing a lot on making a handstand, and she was actually trying to learn it for a long time. And that was part of her story. And in the end of the story, actually, she made a handstand on stage.
Yes.
That's why we're kidding about it.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice
Yeah,
that we thought about it. But let's see. You notice that because of the advent of AI, and
Yeah.
technological developments that are happening very fast, there
Yes.
seems to be a fear that agile is dying away. What's your thought?
Oh.
How can we adjust to this? Because this seems to be also
Yeah,
a
no,
key point.
I've been working on that quite some time, so I have a lot of thoughts about that. So that's
Please.
not a difficult question, maybe difficult to answer. There's a difference between agile and agility, right?
Yeah.
So I think agility we all want. Agility is just organizations being agile, being able to turn around, to play in on new trends, even when they're disruptive, have some resilience. That was also in the talk of I think that was Tricia, right? The
Yeah.
resilience talk, in order to survive. So I think nobody is disputing that. Agile might be a little bit more in the squeeze, as people just did it and tried it and it didn't work. Nothing
Mm.
to do with agile, but a lot of organizations did something like Scrum or doing that, struggling implementing that right, and then they finally conclude maybe you got that hype curve right, with big expectations in the beginning and then they drop down because everything's more difficult. Very often, people and organizations stop there, whatever, whether it's agile implementation or whatever, before they actually can stand up in the resilience way and find a way that works for them. Might not be as great as they thought, but it's definitely working for them. And a lot of organizations drop out at the low dip point and they're not there yet and draw their conclusions. And in the Netherlands, I think a lot of organizations are already done with agile, a little bit. With
Okay.
agile, not agility, but
Okay.
selling less. The other thing is transformation kind of thing. A lot of organizations don't like transformations anymore because a lot of changes in the world, huh? Also political, geopolitical, tectonic movements. So rather than I think if you look back 3 years ago, a lot of organizations has had as aim to be agile or something like that, or business agility was very high on the agenda. I think a lot of organizations are dealing with different stuff now, maybe surviving just. So big transformations don't work for a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the work that I do as agile coach kind of thing or value delivery advisor. So I'm shifting myself as well. I'm no longer calling myself agile coach. I'm helping organizations to get that value delivery working. And there might be organizations that just don't want to do agile transformation, but yes, they do want to have agility. Yes, they want to have fast development. Yes, they want to have cheap delivery. So there's still a lot of things to gain there, and a lot of the tools that I have as an agile coach or former agile coach, and we all have, are still applying. We can still apply them. But I think if we say we want to go and teach your organization to be agile, and we call it transformation, not all of the leadership that we were talking before about will really resonate on those terms, those
Mm.
phrases. So
Mm.
for part, I think there's a great future still because we still need that. But we should maybe just label it slightly different than we used to.
I
And
think
it's
that's
also about storytelling, maybe again. Story
yeah.
is about what story do you tell?
Yeah.
Do you
So
go in and say like, hey, I'm good in transformations, I'm going to transform you into agile, or do you tell a different story when you're having a dialogue with your former or potential client or something like that?
yeah, I like the way you put it, like the transformation and the way it's transforming. I call it transformation fatigue because we,
Yeah,
we we have a lot of changes happening at a very short period of time, and it's happening too fast for we humans to actually
yeah,
stop and grasp. Because when change happens, you got to have this process where you kind of absorb, process what is happening, and kind of use that or relate that to what has happened
yeah.
use
You need
that
some
kind
time.
of
You need some
platform.
time to settle, right?
You
Yeah,
need some time to settle, and that is what a lot of organizations struggle with because it's all about speedy delivery of services and product.
yeah,
It's all about getting things done at the lowest cost, and anything that would disrupt this is something leadership frowns upon. And this is where I kind of link the storytelling part, where how do we then connect people's emotion and inspire them to action within organizations? How do we break down the big data into something palatable?
yeah. And I like that a lot. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that because what I really liked about your talk, because you talked also at the conference, was the first part for me wasn't that interesting because well, I do a lot of presentations, wrote a book about it. So I knew that stuff, like tell a story, what's content of. But the moment you started connecting that to road mapping or product vision kind of thing, I thought it was really interesting. Especially the example that you gave of the guy, was it Michael or something, that changed the clothes in the window shop? I don't
Yeah,
know.
Michael Knox.
Yeah, what did he do? You can better tell than I.
It's the strategy because he uses the life strategy of observing what people are feeling, what the weather gives, and this is something he implemented very early on back in the days. He had a store in New York, and
Yes.
he adapted. So the example is when it's raining, you would see him use clothes or the mannequins that are like, portrays like a like this rainy weather, and switches that quite immediately when it's sunny. So he's very adaptable, and he
Yeah.
uses
So
something
if
that
you're walking
connects.
around in the city and you're feeling cold, then you walk by. He's selling warm coats. If you're feeling rainy and wet, he's selling the raincoats, etc. So
That's it.
that's the guy.
So
You want to.
adaptability, transformation, and
Yeah.
being. I think this would also be termed the agility in this process.
Oh, that's nice.
So
That's nice. Yeah.
And this is something that a lot of organizations need to learn to adapt to the mindset of the audience, to adapt to the mindset of the consumer.
Yeah.
Often when we, are thinking about that kind of delivery, unfortunately, a lot of organizations focus more on what they benefit, which is what is the time that we are able to cut in delivering this service. What amount of money is this saving us? And this is something that often disconnects the audience in the picture. This is what we want to kind of bring back into the
Yeah. I like
and the
that.
audience could be internal people who are like team members also, who could actually, give a
Yeah.
bit of, their perspective, which are often times neglected. And this is where we talk about participatory kind of
Yeah.
management.
One very good tip that I once got was don't tell what you know what you tell.
Yeah, you said that. I was going to ask that. Can you elaborate more on that?
Did I say that before to
Yeah,
you?
when we
Oh,
were having a chat, you were
oh,
kind
very
of,
good. So now again, I was thinking about it again. Like don't tell what you know because we like to tell what we know, right? Blah, blah,
mm,
blah. Especially in. But if you know what you tell, that's the guy who was changing the coats. He knows he has good winter coats. He knows he has raincoats, but he knows what he wants to tell. And at certain moments, you want to tell this story, and the other, he shifts the story around. And by giving the other details, which are all true probably, he's telling a different story, and then people react differently. And if you know what you want to tell and you know it right, then maybe you attract more hearing people, more listeners.
mm,
Actually hear what you're trying to say. And I think that's really important. If because what do we want to say? We want to say leadership, think. Just make a little room in your agenda. Just a little room to start thinking and experimenting what you really need rather than running.
yeah.
And really try to conduct experiments and try to open up that you don't know anything and you need your expert and start thinking about who's your expert that you might want to ask a certain question. Because if he's helping you, you get a little bit more time. And if
Mm,
you use that time wisely, you can do a little bit more experiment and a little bit more learning, and you can approach a little bit more people. It's a completely different play game than how much hours do you have a day? Like bash, whip, work. Oh shit, delay. We're not already in time. It's a different
yeah.
ball game and different atmosphere. And that's where
It,
storytelling comes to hand. I hope. I hope.
Yes, and this is what we are trying to get a lot of organizations to kind of play with, and I
Yeah.
like the fact that it's linked to every aspect of, management, like our daily lives, be it in organizational setting, in our individual lives, and it plays very good in kind of creating a framework that we can follow. And this is something that I try to address more. Like, okay, I've built the framework and kind of see how the implementation could kind of work in different settings, different organizations. But
Yeah.
let's go now to your book, The Wave of Agile.
Yes.
In the book, you talked about the trends and, kind of how value delivery
Mhm.
can be given. How would you match that up with some of the insights that we received at the Scan Agile conference?
Mm.
Was there like what are the evolutions you would tell compared to previous trends in the past?
Um, no, basically not that much. I think I'm going for the second print. So yesterday I picked up the book for first time since a long time. I started reading.
Okay.
Actually, I was getting more happy every page I turned because I thought it's not that bad at all. After reading after a long while, uh, so I think it's still valid for a lot of things, and it's still about not really doing agile, right? For the sake of agile.
Mm,
I tried to conduct that there's two things I think in the book. The main things is that you want to have some certain agility. I think the book talks too much about transformations, like we talked just before. If I would completely rewrite it, maybe I should do some replacing of the word transformations again. I'm not sure, maybe,
mm,
but still holds for that. The other thing is just do what works, right, and keep room to assess that as well. What I liked about talking about the conference, about the guy that was talking about the nuclear plant that he was dismantling. Did you see that?
no,
It
I
was
didn't.
Marcus let me cheek peek. Rila, that was dismantling
Uh,
a nuclear machine, and he was basically telling a story how they had a small research nuclear reactor on the university, and they wanted to dismantle that one. And of course, it's high radioactive stuff, and they never did it before. Nobody ever did it before, maybe, or only a few people. So he said, he's all talking about Agile conference, this guy, right? And he's saying like, well, basically what I did was make the backlog transparent, so everybody knew what we need to do, and everybody could add things to the backlog.
mm,
And let's not put everything in stone because we don't really know yet. So let's be more flexible with the planning. And on Agile conference, you could say, "Oh, is that all? Is that Agile? That's not Agile at all, right? It's only two principles. It's just Agile name only, or something like that." He
mm,
didn't care because this was a big help for him, and it did the job for him. What I liked is that he was quite bold because he was not from the Agile movement. He just needed what he needed, picked some things, and it worked.
mm,
And I think sometimes we should do that as well. So if you refer that to the book as well, just do what works. Don't do what you have to do according to the rule books, with what you think is best. But then on the other hand, I might like to make a disclaimer, small disclaimer. Do that with experts that know which things you can do. So Hans said the managers that need time to go and ask for questions, same thing. But don't be too stubborn and don't be afraid to ask for help because other people know.
mm.
And last week I gave a training to junior people, and I made a Jenga tower. You know the Jenga game with all the wooden blocks that you stack, and then you have to get them out one by
Yeah,
one.
yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say Agile is a framework, right? So you can change it and adapt it to what you like. So you can add some stuff, you can change some stuff, you can get some things out. So
Mm,
maybe just like a Jenga tower, you can get some things out. But if you remove something, in the end, the whole tower will fall. So you need to know how far to go, what you can get out, and what you should remain and leave there. So saying the one thing on like you can adapt, you don't have to do anything, even if you're commissioning, decommissioning nuclear things. Oh, who cares? On the other hand, please don't be stubborn because I've seen too, yeah, I've seen too many people. Currently, I'm working also with some client where other people don't do agile, but they're afraid to say that they don't know. Strange thing happen. Another
mm,
client assignment that I'm starting very soon is about people that don't know. They just don't know, and that's much more fun because then you can really help them, and I don't care. But if
mm,
I try and explain things to people and they're still not listening and they don't understand, then things go very strange and very slow. And then no wonder that people at the end would say agile didn't work and the transformations were fed up with that. And that's such a waste of energy of all of
yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah. Would you attach that to the curse of knowledge? Because knowing at times impedes this ability to kind of be like a child. Okay, I want to learn in the process. I
Yeah.
want to have fun learning.
I'm glad you're saying that. Sometimes I think I know too much by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think I rather have be completely, but I have hobbies for that, right? And I enter something where I don't know, and then I'm completely amazed.
Mm.
So I'll survive by that, by the dual split. Knowing a lot for the work to get the money for, being a lot of unknown things doing that, with a very clumsy in, but just for the fun.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
like doing podcasts, right, Asita? Just it's a different ball game, but it's still fun to do.
Yes, it is. It is. Like I enjoy this a lot. I enjoy exploring people's story, and
Yeah,
it
right.
gets you like very, that's the storytelling angle where you are alert to hearing how did the next person manage certain crisis that you might be going through or might have gone through,
Yeah.
and see how you can relate that or see yourself in that picture. And that is the beauty of storytelling, that it applies in various settings and it could work in this also. But thinking more of the book now, what would you
Yeah.
say, in terms of the balancing the speed, the quality, and long-term sustainability? Because that's something that also caught my attention. That how would we kind of put the right thread across all these three factors? And how do we communicate that across teams? Because often now it's only top
I am going to
management.
ask the question, Asita, or is this the question? This is not a very long story. What do you want to know? I'm losing you in the
So
question. So complicated question.
how do you balance
Yeah,
the speed,
yeah.
quality, and long-term sustainability? And what would it be the tip about?
Oh, saying no would help. So a very long question, very short answer, maybe. No,
Yeah.
because speed and quality. If quality is fixed, right? If really fixed, so not a name only. If you really take quality seriously, then you slow down probably because you need to do things proper. So that's all to do with WIP limits, not doing too much simultaneously. The work in progress. Don't task switch too much. Just focus on completing something first. Uh, Quality is also means not saying that's done when it's not done. So
Mm,
actually, I once a few years ago, I had a team that was really struggling. So like, if we can get this out of the definition of done, then we're much faster. Then we would have reached our goals. Shall we? No, you don't remove. That's why it's in there, right? Just to help you to stay on course and have the quality at a high level. So if you
yeah.
talk about sustainability, I think if the quality is high, the sustainability is more easy. Are you agreeing?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
so if you create technical debt, which is mostly done by making shortcuts in time,
Mm,
maybe not doing everything that you want to do, hard coded old school, hard coded lines instead of parameters, something like that, uh, or not doing the quality checks right, decreases sustainability because then you get the situation where a lot of people have a lot of organizations where tech debt is almost killing them in a certain way. You're really slowing down.
mm,
So if you want to have sustainability in sustainability and pace of delivery speed, don't compromise the quality. And
mm.
and if you can accept that you slow down a bit at in your velocity, well, then you can manage that. And that's one of the main problems, I think, that some organizations don't want to slow down
Yeah.
development
Yeah.
because they
I
are like,
think
go, go, go. And it's the same manager that doesn't have time to listen to your story, Osita.
I like it. I like the short answer. At times it's okay to also say no. And
Yeah,
this could also be, discussed across board, even at top or lower management levels, that, we are able to examine the core of, a project and see the
yeah,
benefits and see the long-term sustainability and see that everything we have kind of matches to delivering the best quality and a long-term sustainability goal that we might have
yeah.
in the process. I think that's
It's funny because I'm suddenly thinking, like, I wanted to say something, and then while you're talking, think a little bit more. So I wanted to say that I always look up to the managers actually that are able to take a loss.
okay.
Yeah, that say no and say like I don't get the deadline now because I don't want to compromise quality or something. So I take the loss. It takes a little bit more money than I thought. I'll take the loss. It's sometimes very difficult to do, especially in political unfriendly environments where it's hard to survive as a manager if you're not successful. How
Mm,
do you take the loss? But while I was thinking about it, I thought I always say that I look up to managers that have time for me.
Mm,
And that one relates more to the first part, of course, that we were saying, and trying to wrap them together. Like I'm always really nice. The managers that have time, that I go there and I say like, oh, what do you want to tell me, Derk-Jan? And sit down actually. And they're very busy. They have so much on their heart, and actually they have time to listen to me and talk with me, help me, advise me, or let me help them. I always thought that was really cool. So now I learned in this talk that I have two things to look up: people that take a loss and people that have time or dare to take time, and maybe they're related. If it,
mm,
if it comes to playing around and experimenting and dare to open up to other people's opinions and lessons in order to learn and to become better.
mm. I like one word you used, experimentation, which is something that a lot of and this I think it all ties down to this experimentation that
Yeah,
a
I think
lot of
we
organizations don't want to really experiment. They
no,
don't want to
because
try.
experiments fail all the time, and then you have to take a loss. And you can better win. That's better than have an experiment and then say we learned a lot, but it didn't work, or
Yeah.
the other way around.
Well, I was listening to a podcast yesterday on strategy, and this was something that was highlighted quite much. Like, okay, what are the ways that companies could do more experiments? How can, because it leads to the discovery of new knowledge, and
Yeah.
it leads to things that might actually be in the best interest of the organization or even an individual. So, how can we scale experimentation, in your opinion?
Whoa! Shall we do another podcast series about that? No, it's a
I know it's a big one, right?
yeah, it's a big one. No, yeah. How can we do that?
And I know you touched that briefly, where you mentioned this, sustainability and
Uh,
what we can say
for
no
one thing,
to.
it's a culture thing, right?
Yeah, it's a
And
culture.
daring to fail or to take a loss is, of course, the other phrasing of failing in a certain way. Uh, so daring to fail could be one thing, but it goes further than that because it's also about an organizational mindset that says we don't know, we want to experiment, and that's very difficult in some organizations. And I think if the listener is working in organizations and that is really aggressive against it, something like that, maybe don't even try it, because then you have to really change that culture, which will be very difficult.
Yeah, yeah,
But so that will be one thing. The other thing, experimenting, just doing it would also help, right? Just doing it. You don't have to tell your manager everything. Um, and so especially on Friday afternoon, why not? Eh? Or even sometimes, if you like in the weekend, you don't do that. I don't want to emphasize that people should do overtime, but once in a while, do some kind of hackathon kind of thing could be really fun. I don't mind. It's Saturday now as well, right, Rosita?
mm,
Sometimes I don't mind doing these things outside,
yeah.
9 to 5 working hours. Where were you going? What was the question again?
Yes, I think it was all about
Experimenting.
experimenting. The
Yeah,
the idea that, but I think I like something you mentioned, that it could become a culture in the
yeah,
organization, and we all, like we say, culture. It's, strategy for breakfast, or and this is something that,
yeah,
if the culture is implementing is put in place for people to embrace failure, like you
yeah,
mentioned, then it's not seen as a bad thing. That, hey, we could go the process, and yes, at this point we failed, but we learned this and we learned that, and implement that knowledge, in the
yeah.
processes that we have.
Yeah, and still one more time, I like to emphasize maybe secret isn't that bad sometimes. I remember it's a different time, different story, different topic. But I was suddenly thinking, once I was a test manager, and in that organization we were very busy. We didn't have much time, and I was showing a graph of the test results, and the manager didn't like that because he didn't want me to make graphs. He wanted me to test. So rather than start the testing, I did less testing and worked hard in automating the graph, just so the next week I could show him, like, yeah, this graph doesn't take any time at all. Look. Uh,
Yeah,
so by doing the opposite as expected, I could turn it around, and from then on, I could show the graph every time. Uh, but of course, if you would have come in at the moment I was secretly not doing the testing but developing the graph, then he would be like, "What are you doing there, Jan? Sorry, I told you to test, not."
Yeah,
But with the door closed and somebody on the lookout, I'm just exaggerating, storytelling, right?
yeah,
With somebody on the lookout and the door closed, I could secretly, and then later on I could say that. So maybe sometimes you have to do that because a failed experiment is difficult, but a successful experiment everybody loves. And then suddenly nobody's asking like, "Hey, but when did you do that?
yes. Or how did you do that
How
even?
did you do that?" Yeah, nobody
Yes.
cares if it's a success, right?
Yeah,
How much
yeah,
time did go into it? Oh, not that much. Oh, awesome. We're very pleased that you did it.
yeah. So basically, we have to redefine the metrics of success sometimes to include
Yeah,
failure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's and this is something that I really appreciate your insights on this, how practically, because I know you train a lot of organizations, you
Yeah.
train a lot of individuals, so you must have seen a lot go good and go bad.
Yeah.
And
I
in the
agree.
process, okay, now it brings me back to this aspect of storytelling, How would you say you have seen in these processes that you've trained these guys, how they implement storytelling or fail to implement it, or where they could have implemented it? And how can we use more of these tools to better help
Yes.
people manage change?
Well, some people say you cannot change more. You cannot run in front of the troops too far ahead because then you're losing them. So don't go too far in your innovation kind of thing. I think the same story. If you have a very blue organization that's very strict on processes and formal communication, you can start telling stories, but people don't understand what you're doing, probably. So they'll lose the first half of your story by thinking like, "What is going on here?"
Mm,
Uh, so that, again, it's culture, right? So then you cannot really do that. If you have somebody who's really on data and asks you about data, you got those people, right? I hate those people, to be honest. So no personal people. There's, "Oh, let's go to the moon and that, blah," and then yeah, but how many people is that? And what's the data to support that theory? So like, oh yeah, shit. And sometimes I have it, and sometimes I don't. But
mm,
you have those people, and they want data and they want facts. So don't tell them fiction stories because they don't like it. I've been in
yeah.
organizations where people say, "Oh, we're going to do agile, we're going to do all kind of nice things," and start putting big posters on the wall. And then people say, "That's not us. Yeah, too far off, my friend."
Mm,
They kind of whistle back, and then they just, oh, you have to be more in the pace. So that's one thing. But I think if you do management by example and put in little things like that every time, the
mm.
people get used to it, and they might even start liking it.
So that's more.
Yeah, and the other thing could be that you actually explicitly create a setting. I remember once that it's a long time ago. Let me think. That we had some storytelling session actually where we had a petrol heater because we didn't have campfire. Storytelling is old, right? It's a core thing. Sitting by the campfire, we all did it in our youth, telling stories. We know what it is. So if you
Mm,
can spark that little thing, then people might start telling different stories. But you have to get them out of that strict everyday routine first. I remember once we had like 10, 20 years ago, something like some kind of program with a client where we wanted to change a lot of things. And then suddenly we had a storytell session. We actually had a petrol heater because we were not allowed to put a fire in the office. And put all chairs around it in a circular setting, and then we were having campfire storytelling by setting. And people actually bought that and went along
mm,
with it because it was so far off of the normal setting, despite what I said about just now about the 10%. This was so off in the setting that I actually started telling stories in a more natural way.
yeah.
But it's bold, right? So it was
Yeah, yeah,
it was
yeah, it is.
an elder colleague. So when he did it, I thought, why is he doing quite bold? But it was really storytell session around the campfire. And by putting it that way, people went, well, more with the idea, and actually more nice stories were being told.
Mhm.
But
Oh,
I
that's
forgot what we did with it. So unfortunately, I cannot really complete this story for you. But I was sitting with I don't know what it led to in the end. That was good.
Oh. Thanks for that insight. I think it's really practical to see how it is being used now. And
Yeah,
I think I see a lot of this, trend coming up. And like I put it this way, that a lot is changing very fast,
yeah.
but something remains constant.
The campfire.
Campfire setting. And
Everybody
that's
loves
basically the
campfires, right? Yeah,
so that's the storytelling element of it. And it's
yeah,
outlived civilizations whereby, we're still using the same tool, but we are kind of using it a lot lesser than before.
yeah. I think so.
And this
But
is something that, like a tool that is this effective is used less, which has outlived civilization. So that's my
it's kind of
read.
kind of kind of pushed away, right, by the rational business people, because
Yeah.
your story was great, for one thing. Second thing, that I had a podcast myself about the conference where I referred to your talk, and now again we talk about storytelling. So storytelling is suddenly a top of mind for me. But if you would ask me like 2 months ago or something like that, like storytelling, do you ever do it? It's like storytelling. Nice. But I don't know.
I think I
So
caught a lot of
maybe
this.
maybe switching that knob, the button in your hand, like, oh, I can also tell a story now, right?
Yeah. I think I caught your clip about that. I think was it the place where you're mentioning the Black Friday? It
Yeah,
was
yeah, the Black
it was
Friday.
in
Yeah,
yeah,
the
it was in
comment.
no, it was in Dutch, but I kind of caught some of the words that is so I can that's good that like
That's about
at
your
least
talk. Yeah,
yeah, that is, and this is the goal that in settings you kind of default, and because it's easy to remember things like that, and you can associate it with things that you relate to, and that's the power of storytelling. And you can always adapt it to suit your own need in whatever setting that you have. So that is really something that I appreciate that came in handy, and that it was really used in that way. And
yeah,
I know that we can continue this conversation so broadly, but I
yeah.
want it to be like a summary of basically the Scan Agile conference, because I would also be going through a lot of these conversations with some of the speakers and the attendees,
Yeah.
to kind of get their own perspective and bring
It's all
like an
together.
overall picture, an
Yeah,
overall
and then
story.
again to go back to the opera. Now we have a lot of melodies in your head at the end, and they're all playing around, and then the individual melody lines might get lost, but the overall sound and feeling remains, and that's what we like as well.
Yeah, and I like that. With that reference, I see a lot of vinyl behind you. You're a
Oh
lot of,
yes, yes. No, it's not opera. I don't like operas, but I like vinyl. Yeah, I like
and
music.
you play also. What you play the piano.
Yeah, I play a lot of instrument a little bit.
Okay, can you tell us a bit about what you do at your spare time?
Well, lately not that much, but this one is a very old 60s organ with tubes. One of the very first made for the home thing. It has a very nice sound. I like to play some guitar sometimes.
Okay.
I like to play some ukulele as well,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm very lousy in it. So it's an indoor hobby.
That's the goal. That's the
Yeah,
play we are
yeah.
talking about.
So I'm not playing for you. No.
No, someday, I think when I come to the Netherlands, we can have
Next
that
year,
session,
next
in that.
conference. Yeah,
Oh,
cool.
that's beautiful. Thank you, Derk-Jan, for this. It was really nice having you on the show. And I'm sure we're gonna have you again on the podcast where we can, dive into other aspects of
Yeah,
the
we're not done yet, are we?
we are going we are getting there.
We're done
That's
today here, but we're not done talking.
no, we're not done talking in
No.
that way. So what we do.
Cool.
So in summary, what would you say to a listener thinking there's a lot of uncertainty happening, there's a lot of change and transformation going on too fast
Yeah,
in whatever setting. It could be in the organizational setting, it could be also at the individual level.
yeah.
What would be your one giveaway to them,
Oh,
thinking about all these things happening at that time? And I want you to please link your thoughts in the wave of agile, to this.
yeah. Um, well, maybe they will be aware, listen very carefully to where your organization is at. So the waves of agile, the three waves of agile adoption, or something like that. indicate like how mature, between brackets, not really mature, which challenges your organization is ready to take on. And don't go like a donkey shot running up too far in front of the troops, trying to fight mills that the organization doesn't see. I always say like when I was a kid, and I was counting my pocket money, and yeah, I can buy new tool, new Lego or something. And I ran to the toy story. Then if somebody would say like, "Hey, Derk-Jan, did you ever think about your pension funds?" That wouldn't resonate, right? I'm a kid.
Yeah.
I just want my new Lego. I just got my pocket money, just enough. I've been saving, something like that.
Mm.
Well, now I know it has some importance in the life. Same holds with all changes you do, but also the agile changes. If you're going real fancy agile for organizations that are not there yet, they still have to learn why it's important what you say. And it's
Mm.
difficult. You were referring to the knowledge, right? If you have too much knowledge, I have the same problem. Sometimes I
Mm.
foresee the problem already 5 steps ahead. But
Yeah.
then I really have to restrain myself and taking that first step and say, let him take that step, and then I can talk about the second step. Only then. And that's in the book as well, The Waves of Agile. The wave model is basically a 3 step model rather than 5 steps to the store. In like, where's your organization? And try to align all the improvements, all the interventions you do with what the organization is at. And I can tell you something more about it, but then it will be a really long podcast. But I think the solution to this, if you want to survive the agile thing, is basically embrace the practices that are there. So be a good professional and learn all about practices. And I'm going to talk about that in Vilnius in May, I guess.
Mm.
So some other talks. So there will be more about that if you follow me rather than Osita, dear listener. Follow me. We can talk about it later as well.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the thing. Like try to understand what the practices are in the industry. Try to learn them, even if you don't have time doing just a little bit. You don't have to be an expert in everything.
Mm.
Know them, know that they exist, and then don't waste your time in doing fancy stuff that are too far out of reach for the organization you're in, how tempting they may be.
Mm.
And in that case, I think you can surf the waves that are coming towards you anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
And
Jessica.
that's a perfect answer to wrap it up because and I like the analogy you gave about yourself. You often see things, very far ahead, but you really have to carry other people along because they
Yeah,
might not be seeing that far out. And,
yeah,
for them to see that far out, you have to probably go down to their level and give them like a bit stage by stage, insight on these things. And this
yeah.
is something some managers could learn, because of the experience that they have. And I think this would really play in, to individuals and organizations alike. Thank
Thanks.
you,
Thank
Jan,
you.
for coming. It's really nice having you. And I know if we start talking, we can continue this conversation the whole day. But
Yeah,
let's follow up on this and come back to these conversations in future days where we kind of break it down, And I would want to explore more of your book and see how we can also, take a bit of that, knowledge there and see how
yeah.
we can apply it in the storytelling angle.
Oh, that will be great. That will be great.
That would be nice. And I'm still taking you up on the offer of, reviewing my book.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, but let's call it a day now, and let's stop recording, and then we can have some small after chat. But
Nice one. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming on the show. It was nice to have you.
you're welcome.